Welcome to another edition of the CFB Nation Southeastern Recruiting Show. I'm your host, Brian Smith, and today is 2025 quarterbacks from the Deep South, Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, Georgia, big-time prospects, some of which have already made a college decision. Some are kind of in flux, but have a pretty good idea where they're going. All of them have one thing in common. They can really spin it. And I'm going to start off this list with a quarterback that's one of my favorite players in the class of 2025, regardless of position, and that would be Deuce Knight from Lucedale, Mississippi, George County. But let's go through the list before I show my film from all these, or show the film from all these kids, and talk about the reason I put them in the order I did. Deuce is the one guy that I think is really unique, especially because he's a left-handed player. He can be a run-pass quarterback, but he can also play a role basically of just being sit in the pocket and pick you apart. When teams played off him from going through his film, he really went at it in terms of being patient. Young quarterbacks typically don't do that, especially sophomores in high school. Again, 2025, they have 2 more seasons of high school football as I published this video. So I'm not really sure how many guys are going to match his intangibles anyway, because he kind of makes those spectacular plays, but he also makes the 3 and 4 yard gains with short passes and checkdowns like a guy that's 28 years old. So I don't even know if he can drive a car yet, but he's the first guy I went with. Another player similar to that is from Saraland High School, just outside of Mobile, Alabama. Texas commitment, KJ Lacey. Big arm, athletic, great charisma. Everybody likes to be around him. KJ's a great personality. I think that he's a guy that has a really high ceiling, but he's a little bit different, in my opinion, than Deuce, in the sense that Deuce has size, 6'4", 6'5", will run over some guys. KJ's a little smaller, and he can really scoot. Guys, they get out of position sometimes because they think that he can just run a little bit, and then you see him take off. He's like a slot receiver, but he's also got a cannon for an arm. So I'm curious to see how he develops, because you could really label him in a couple of different ways. The next group, the next 2 kids, power pocket passers, traditional, precision passing, deep ball, etc. George McIntyre. He plays at Brentwood Academy in Nashville, one of the better programs in the state of Tennessee in the South. He's the guy that's going to pick you apart, and he reminds you of what an NFL quarterback would have looked like 25 years ago. It's still some kind of a Tom Brady type, but he has more mobility than that. I love him. Antoine Hill Jr. He's from Houston County in Warner Robins. Humongous arm. Humongous. He's not as developed with his technique yet, but just in the last 6 months, he's taken a big jump. Saw him reach recently at Future 50. Really liked how he had improved just since January. I saw him January to 7 on tournament. He's more consistent with his motion and especially his feet, but that arm talent is just insane. So curious to see where he ends up. Trevel Jones Jr., kid I've known for quite a while. He's at Mandarin High School, plays with Jamie French, one of the best receivers in the country, among other players. I've got a lot of guys at Mandarin. He can move the pocket. He can definitely run RPO. He can definitely take off, but he is a pocket guy first. He's committed to Florida State. He's a kid kind of like KJ Lacey in that he can move some, but I'm kind of bracketing him more as a pocket guy because that's really what he wants to do. It's ironic. He's a little bit like his buddy Colin Hurley, who was in his class but reclassified. Colin can run if he wants, but he really wants to be in the pocket. I think that Tramell, if he could, he would stay in the pocket even more than he does. But in today's college football world, I'm sure Florida State, with how they run their offense, they're going to ask him to move quite a bit too. The next player is very unique because he kind of carries himself like a baseball player, easygoing guy, laid back. Carter Smith, Bishop Verot, based out of Fort Myers, Florida. 6'3", athletic, long, limber. His personality makes you feel comfortable. He reminds me, from all the interviews I used to see of like Joe Montana, just everything just kind of goes right off his back. No big deal. But when it's under pressure, he can make throws with a guy in his face. Again, he's a little bit like Tramell. He would prefer to be in the pocket, but he can take off. In baseball, he can play shortstop, etc. though. So he has the athleticism to do that. And then finally, amongst numerous other players I could have put on this list, there's certainly plenty more. Locklan Hewitt. He's committed to Wake Forest. He's at St. Augustine High School in Florida, just south of Jacksonville, up in the northern section of the state. This kid, probably the most in terms of his style, his stature at this point in his career, etc., reminds me of former Wake Forest quarterback Sam Hartman, who's now transferred to Notre Dame. Love this kid's film. I've seen him play numerous times, 7-on-7, etc. Great guy. And the funny thing about him is just how competitive he is. Even though he's not the biggest guy, he's listed at 6'1", 175. I'm not sure if he's even 6'1". I don't know, but he's accurate and he makes clutch throws. So without further ado, I'm going to go through this list one by one and talk a little bit more about them as I share my screen. We're going to start with Deuce and go on from there. Deuce is absolutely unequivocally electric. So hard not to like what he does on the football field. Watch how easily the ball comes out of his hand, no matter what direction he throws. Like, that's a precision pass. He needed to put a little more juice, but it doesn't even look like he's trying. And then the burst right there. To put things in perspective about Deuce Knight, we're talking about a young man that has a vertical leap over 40 inches, but he's 6'4.5", 6'5", something like that, and can throw the football accurately with a consistent motion, regardless of whether or not he has his feet set, if he's lined up to the front of the pocket, or he's on the side, whatever, he figures it out. And then, of course, things like this, that's not fair. As for where Lucedale, Mississippi is, I had to look it up myself. I've traveled all over this great country. It is about an hour, I would guess, just by looking at the map, northwest of Mobile, Alabama. It's kind of just a little north of I-10 before you get into Mobile, as Mobile is right on the Mississippi border. And it's just out in the sticks. Not a lot of people knew about this kid, but once his film started to circulate, elite arm talent and just a natural athlete. I could see this kid doing all kinds of things. He could have been a triple jumper in track, baseball. He could have been a center fielder, whatever he wanted, but he truly does love quarterback. From talking to him a few times through Twitter, etc., he just enjoys the whole grind of the training and everything else that goes with it. And that's probably one of the reasons you see this motion being so consistent. To compare him to a player from 1 year ahead of him in 24, think of a Aaron Nolan prospect with even more athleticism. Of course, Aaron Nolan is committed to Ohio State. Deuce, another left-handed guy, long and rangy, just a little bit taller than Aaron as well. He has more speed and more burst, but the accuracy is also there. Look how long his stride is, just naturally. That is an incredible ball. I love to see that pass right there, because that is a level 2 ball. It's the one that often separates the guys that can actually play in the NFL or not, because you got to make that consistently. Just over the linebacker in front of the safety. And that's another one similar to it. You can see from all these different angles, one consistent theme, though. The ball goes where it should, and it's a very catchable pass. He'll mix up the velocity and the trajectory on a consistent basis, but he leads his guy. One more play here from Deuce. He gallops more than he runs. It's just tremendous. That's a heck of a football player. So Deuce Knight is probably about as good an example of today's modern quarterback. Pocket presence, the ability to be consistent and on time, can throw some zip when he needs to. But when it breaks down, or if they just call his number, he can take off and make a big play. I love this kid. I think he's a national top 10 player. Again, he's from Lucedale, Mississippi, itty-bitty place down in the corner, not that far from Mobile, Alabama. So not as many people knew about him until recently. But the offers, Tennessee, Ole Miss, Notre Dame, numerous programs are after him. I think he's going to be as good a player as there is in the class of 25. All right. Next up, KJ Lacey. Saraland High School, Saraland is also, ironically, right down the road from Mobile. It's a suburb, actually, of Mobile. And he has a rocket launcher. He's not a very big guy. He's 6'1". He told me the other day at Future 50, he kind of fluctuates in the 170 to 174 range. He can throw 3/4 like that. Like he's a shortstop kind of guy in terms of an athlete. Really quick burst left or right and just makes unique throws. This University of Texas commit needs to add weight, I'll grant you that. But trying to tackle him in space is not fun, and he can make throws like that. Very exciting player. Man, he can really swing it. When it's a line drive pass you need, and look at that. Change in the arm angle, that's a special play. Normally, you wouldn't want a young guy kind of throwing off different angles, but he just has a great ability to do it. Can't teach it. That's innate. There's a nice rhythm throw, though, and look at the accuracy on the ball over the shoulder. He is also blessed because Saraland has a lot of talent, including Ryan Williams, who one could even argue is the best player in the country in the class in 25. That's probably him there catching that bomb. But at the same time, he finds a way to get the ball to all his players. They won state this past year. Saraland got their state championship in large part because of the ability. Look at that speed. Oof. Because of the ability of Lacey to get the ball out like that, even when he had to throw off his back foot and kind of sidearm it. Took a shot and still threw an over-the-shoulder pass for a touchdown. Off his back foot, I don't advise that, but again, arm strength makes a play. It was amazing to me how many times that I've watched his film and he finds a way to make a play even when there's a guy in his face, because again, he's maybe 6 foot, 6'1". Incredible talent, though. And if KJ can just get up to like 190, he'll be good. I also like that he wasn't worried about the competition that is headed into Austin, Texas. Obviously, Manning's there. They've got the mullet. They've got some other guys. They have a lot of talent in the quarterback room for the Longhorns, and he didn't care. He really enjoyed his visit. Told me that it was just comfort and just knew he wanted to go there. So he decided to commit to the University of Texas. So very good for KJ. I think his upside is very high. Again, he just needs to add weight. He's 170 pounds. He admitted it. I even told him, I said, you need to eat some peanut butter. So great kid, though. Next up. This is a player that's a little bit different than what we've just seen. This is Mr. McIntyre. Brentwood Academy, Nashville, Tennessee area. And he can throw off platform and he can move, but think of more like what you would see out of Tom Brady. Very consistent motion. I love his consistency with the arm angle when he's not pressured. You can tell that it's very much something he has worked on. Over the top, nice follow through, doesn't overextend and get off his front foot too much. But when he has to wind up like that, he can do that too. Big fan of his ability to throw the football on rhythm, but every now and then, like right there, you can see he stepped into that one pretty good. That's a great angle, by the way. If you don't get up close to his feet and don't make him throw in an unusual manner, he's probably as accurate a quarterback as there is in the class of 25. Nice job of moving the pocket. That is off platform. You don't think of guys like Brady didn't make many of those plays playing for the Patriots or anything later in his career with the Bucs either. I think that McIntyre is able to do that. And there's a few plays on his film, if you go all the way through it, where he ran and he just tried to pick up 5-8 yards and he was helping move the chains. That's where he's at. He's not going to do what Lacey or Knight does in regards to making 40-yard runs, etc. Those guys can really do that when they want. This guy would rather just roll a little bit or make a guy miss and then let it fly. Nice job right there, though. He couldn't set his feet and still threw a tremendous pass. Again, if we did a competition today, just like throwing in an object and coming the closest, I would put my money on McIntyre to be the most consistent and able to do that. Nice job here again, avoiding the rush. Still got a nice motion throwing over the top. That play right there is a very important one. Guy's wide open. The only thing you can do to make that play fail is overthrow it. He let a little bit off, so his guy didn't get overthrown, and he scored. This is a great angle. Nice job. I'm going to let that one go with Mr. McIntyre. If you need a guy that can throw on time, it's pretty hard not to like it. Alabama, Tennessee, everybody you can imagine is recruiting him. He has not made a decision yet, but it's really hard not to like what McIntyre can do. I think he's going to be a big-time player in college, and because of how he carries himself, and he's at Brentwood Academy, excellent coaching, tradition-rich program, the way he's trained and everything, he could be a kid that plays rather early, and he could be a 5-star. It's possible. He's got to see how much bigger he gets, how much stronger, athleticism, etc. But he's on that path to be one of the best players in the class of 25. Next up, this player is similar to McIntyre, but he has an even stronger arm. Antoine Hill has a howitzer. I mean, that is ridiculous how far he just threw that. He is from the Warner Robins area in Georgia, central Georgia. Big, long arm kid, can really spin it. But, I mean, throwing the ball 60 yards in the air and doing it without, quote, unquote, taking a couple of hop steps, curl hops, whatever you want to say, he can do it. And he can also throw like that. That wasn't a level 3 ball. He put a little bit of loft on it, but not much. He can throw a rope at any time. These are the plays, though, that will define him. And he started to show some of this on the out patterns and the timing routes when I was at Future 50 and they were doing drills. Antwann did a much better job when I saw him in June than when I saw him in late January at a 7-on tournament. He has the ability to just gun it, and sometimes he would throw it too hard. He's learned to take something off his throws, and he's learned to develop better timing and rhythm underneath. And when you can do that, everything can really be at your own disposal. Kind of like McIntyre, he can move the pocket, but he prefers to throw from the behind the center to the tackles. He's not going to make a whole lot of plays outside the box. At least he didn't for Houston County. So I think it's going to be interesting to see where he ends up and what they try to do with him. I'm not even honestly sure just how athletic he is because he throws so much from the pocket for his high school. Cannot teach that arm. Goodness gracious. He gets it out pretty quick for a long arm guy. And just to kind of give some measurables and to put it in I don't know, a semblance of like a guy that he'd be somewhere to that's older. He's 6'4" at least. He's over 200 pounds. And I would say he'll end up 230 or so, if I had to guess. So he's probably about as prototypical as you're going to find for a kid in the high school level, projecting him like, where is he going to be if he ends up in the NFL? He's a pocket guy. McIntyre even moves more than he does. So I'm curious to see, once again, how much does Antoine Hill move over his last 2 years, whether it's avoiding the rush, design plays, or occasionally just kind of ad-libbing. There's a couple plays, if you notice, with McIntyre, he told his guy, go down the field, and he made a guy miss or whatever and extended. Antwann didn't do that quite as much, but I think that with his arm strength, it would behoove him to get more comfortable with that because, man, sometimes those broken plays get the biggest bombs down the field, and you're not going to outrun his arm very often. I mean, he has electric power on that arm. So I'm curious to see what he ends up doing. Next up. All right. Trevel Jones. Jones, Mandarin High School, Jacksonville, Florida, committed to the Florida State Seminoles. He would prefer to stay in the pocket, but right here's an example. When he does get outside the pocket, he's very dangerous. I saw him as a freshman absolutely unequivocally carve up Jacksonville Mandarin. 3-4 play drives go 80-plus yards. He knew where the ball was going. He knew why it was going there, and he did it over and over again. Right there's an example of his athleticism. Nice throw off his back foot. That's fantastic. When he has some zip to give, he lets you have it. That's a good example. Wasn't much room there. Nice tight window through from Trevel Jones. A little bit of arc on that one. He's probably 6'1", 190, something like that, in that range. And he lets his receivers, and believe me, Mandarin has plenty of them, get out and run. Nice ball here. And then there's another nice level 2 ball. If you notice, he's a pretty good athlete, good feet. But again, he prefers to be in the pocket and let his guys go get it. He's got elite athletes outside, Jamie French included, arguably the best receiver in the class of 25. Here's a good example of him taking off when he wants. He can do this. It's just that Jones would prefer to be a passer. But he lets his guys kind of go get it. He doesn't overthrow them. And the Mandarin kids, by and large, can win those 50-50 balls. So a lot of talent there. That's a great example. One off the line of scrimmage. Quarterback doesn't lead him too much. Slot fade for a score. Keeps the play alive. Look at him shift his feet around to get a nice pass in. That's tremendous. So obviously, we're not talking about just a good player. Trevel Jones has got tremendous upside because of his feet, his awareness, how to throw the ball, what kind of loft, velocity. He's advanced. And I think he's going to be a very good player for the Florida State Seminoles. Next up, Carter Smith, Bishop Verot, Fort Myers, Florida. And Carter is a very unique kid out of this group. You could argue he's the most difficult to project. He needs to add some weight, but he's at least 6'2", and he understands the game in general. Like, he could have been a receiver and been a pretty good player, whatever, could have been a free safety. He's a good athlete, baseball player, but he is not afraid to take a shot and still deliver. And as you can see, the athleticism there kind of stands out. He threw for just over 3,000 yards last year, and it doesn't surprise me. He has a lot of moxie in his game. Offers for this kid are all over the place. LSU, Miami, Florida, Florida State, etc. He's got a ton. He's getting some interest from Notre Dame and some other schools too. If I had to guess right now, I would say Miami has the best shot at him, but it's a long way to go, and he's not in any hurry to make a decision. He wants to make an informed decision, and that's a smart thing for him to do. One more play here from Carter. Nice corner ball. Carter is a kid that I think will end up in the 200-pound range, 205. His playing style is another kid kind of like Trevel Jones, would prefer to be in the pocket, but sometimes he's got to move, and he's okay with that too. He's a really good athlete. It's just he understands timing and rhythm with the receivers. I've talked to him about it. I've interviewed him before, seen him at Elite 11. Consistency. He wants things to go in a consistent manner, and that's why you see his throwing motion be that way. That's why you see him consistently move his feet in a similar fashion. He wants the same overall rhythm to get the most completions. He's advanced mentally, and I think he's a kid that will pick up the college game very, very fast. One more player, and this is one of the more unique kids. I left this one for the end, and it wasn't anything other than just he's a great athlete that I think just needs to gain weight. Locklan Hewitt, St. Augustine High School. He's got a lot of moxie in his game, kind of like Carter, but a little bit smaller. And because he's at St. Augustine, which for people, again, that don't know, slightly south of Jacksonville, Florida, they've got 3 or 4 kids that are Division I receivers. You don't think of that area really having a ton, but the area has changed a lot. There's been a lot of people move just south of Jacksonville to get out of the city. A handful of schools, Creekside, St. Augustine, et cetera, have really seen their enrollments change over the last few years. They're adding more schools. Probably going to see more prospects coming between Daytona and Jacksonville as people look for more space to live. Anyway, to make a long story short, with Jackson, he just finds a way, man. Just off kilter, different angles, doesn't care. I've seen this kid at a 7-on-7 tournament call his own plays, lead his team down the field and score. Real easygoing personality. He's the kind of guy you want to be around. Athletically, again, kind of like Carter Smith, Jackson Hewitt is a guy that I really think, Locklan Hewitt, he's a guy I think could probably play about any sport, baseball, track. He could be a different position in football, be a pretty good receiver, especially at the high school level. He'll throw from the pocket, but he just seems to be almost like an old school Fran Tarkington. He almost throws better when he's moving. Wake Forest already got his commitment, but I know a lot of schools would still love to get him. Miami loves him. Several other programs do as well. Good pickup for Wake Forest. I think he's the kind of kid that could walk in and compete for a starting job by the end of his freshman year. Highly, highly intelligent young man. That's probably the biggest thing that I want to add here. Just from being around him and communicating with him at tournaments and through Twitter and stuff, he really finds a way to figure out any given play, no matter how dire the circumstance with blocking, etc. Locklan Hewitt's going to make that play. Right there is an interesting throw. He didn't even have his feet set, and he was able to make that throw consistently with the arm motion. I mean, he can contort his body in a lot of different ways. That's one of the few on time, on rhythm from the pocket passes, and you see the accuracy. But there again, when he's on the move, that's his deal. One more pass, quick screen, gets it out to his guy. So you get the idea. Locklan Hewitt, St. Augustine, do not sleep on him. He is a big-time player, and I think he could have played at any school in the country, Alabama, Georgia, wherever. He is just full of moxie and makes the throws that you need to win football games. Well, that's going to wrap it up in terms of the actual players, but a couple of other notes here. Class 25 overall. I'm doing a whole bunch of 25 stuff, a ton. Quarterback, running back, receiver, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Elite talent all across the South. I'll do some comparisons with kids from other areas. Like I might have a kid from California, just as an example that I want to use to similar body type or whatever. But the most talent in the country, and it's not even close, people can argue with me all they want, is right here. I live in Florida, down south, Georgia, Arkansas, Alabama, Mississippi, South Carolina, Tennessee, into North Carolina. Like it's insane just how much talent is down here. So I'm going to be doing a ton of these breakdowns. I really enjoy it. Going to have people on the podcast doing interviews, going to have people on the podcast that are like me, that are analysts. I'm sure I'll have Larry Bluestein and several other guys on here at different points in time. It's going to be fun. So please make sure you like this podcast, subscribe, see it scrolling across the bottom there. Apple, Spotify, etc. The YouTube channel is going to have a ton of videos. Some of the stuff that we do here on CFB Nation, not just me, is going to be more video related. So it's easier to use YouTube on some of it. But if you want to hear some podcasts that just talk about what's going on in recruiting, going to have a couple of those shows every week too. So once again, thank you very much. Everybody have a great day.